Okay, all right. Shabbat shalom. We are back. We are and most of chapter 3. Let's see what we might as well read through chapter 2, and then we'll double back and go over it. So I'm gonna pull it up here. Pull up chapter 2. We'll read through it, and we'll look at a couple things inside of it. We can actually start at verse 4. Somebody read that nice and loud.
These are the births of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the days of Elohim. Yahweh Elohim made earth and heaven. Now no shrub of the field was yet of the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahweh Elohim had not set rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. But a mist went up from the earth and watered the entire surface of the ground. And Yahweh Elohim formed the man out of dust from the ground, and breathed into his nostrils breath of life. And the man became a living being. And Yahweh Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground Yahweh Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A river went out of Eden to water the garden, and went from there to divide, and became 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison. It is the one surrounding the entire land of Halah, where there is gold. And the gold that is land is good. Bdellium is there, and the showman stone. And the name of the second river is Gion. It is the one surrounding the entire land of Cush. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel. It is the one which goes towards the east of Ashur. And the fourth river is Euphrates. Sorry. And Yah Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it out, to guard it. And Yah Elohim commanded the man, saying, eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in that day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. And Yah Elohim said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I am going to make a helper for him and his counterpart. And from the ground Yah Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living being, that was its name. So the man gave name to all livestock, and to the birds of the heavens, and to every beast of the field. But for the man there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart. So Yah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib which Yah Elohim had taken from the man, he made it into woman and brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman, because she was taken out of man. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, yet they were not ashamed.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, so let us go back and look at a couple of these things here. A couple important points. So the first thing when we look at, sometimes I've heard a lot of people, when we look at the first two chapters of Genesis, um, I, I don't know where the thought process comes from, but I've certainly heard it a lot. People talk about there being two creations.
Yeah.
And they talk about, well, there was men that was created in the first chapter of Genesis, and then there was this other group of people that was created, this whole other creation thing that happens in the second chapter of Genesis. I don't know if anybody, you ever heard people talk
Yeah, I
about
did.
that?
My cousin Wade, yeah, he think it was 6 day people. Remember I
Oh,
told you
to
that?
see, he got even a name for it, like this.
Yeah,
This
he got
six.
his name, he got his own name. 6
Yeah.
day people.
What are those? The 6 day people are the chapter one
Chapter
people.
1 people. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I want to deal with that a little bit because let me just pull this up here. Let's see, where is it? All right, yeah, this and this and this and this. Okay, so if we look over here where it says this translation says these are the births. These are the births of the heavens and the earth when they were created. The King James probably says these are the generations.
Yeah, it does.
We want to look at this word right here, generations, which is Toldot. 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 Which over here means family, history, birth, generations. I want to look at this word study. Okay, so this Toldot was translated as generations in the King James, as it says. This key Hebrew word carries with it the notion of everything entailed in the person's life and that of his or her progeny. In the plural, it is used to denote the chronological procession of history as humans shape it. It refers to the successive generations in one family or a broader division by lineage. In let's see, in Genesis, what we're just looking at here, the word accounts for the history of the created world. So when we see, there's about 11 times in the scriptures where the scriptures say these are the generations. Elleh, Elleh, Toldot. These are the generations. And every single time when we see this, except for in this place here, it is giving you like genealogies. And when we see it, it's not as if the people are just being born, in those verses. It's giving you a rundown. It's giving you the genealogy. So it's like a recap, right? So this here is no different. When we see here, it's not real. It's not as if to say that this is a separate account. What it is giving you details about something that already happened. Okay, but I don't want to just say this. So let's look at a couple examples. If we looked over at they probably have some here, right? If we look at, let's see, Genesis 5:1 says, this is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that Adam created, in the day that Elohim created man, he made him in the likeness of Elohim. and then it goes on. What you there? You in what?
I'm in the King James, yeah.
What do verse 5, verse 2 say after that? 5:2.
Oh, it says, male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam in the day when they were created.
Right. So if we go to verse 1 again, it says it has our little subtitle thing here. This is the book of the genealogy. And then it goes over telling you something that you already know about. You already know about that. It already happened. It's just kind of restating it or showing you other details. It does it again over here in 6:9. Same thing. You read that?
You want to King James?
Yeah, read the King James. Yeah. 6:9.
These are the generations for the genealogy of Noah. Noah was just a man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with Yahweh.
Okay, so what's 10 say?
10 says, and Noah begat 3 sons. And
Oh, okay, there we go. All right, so we see the same thing with there. We see it over in Genesis where it talks about where we find out about Joseph and all of his brothers. I think it says these are the generations over there too. Let me look over there real quick. Genesis 30. I wasn't looking for this one, but Genesis 36. Now these are generations of Esau, who is Edom, and then it goes through all his wives and all of his children. Genesis 37, verse 2, these are generations of Jacob. And then it starts to tell you the story of Jacob. So I'm saying all that just to say, when we see that, it's always about to give you more details about something that you've already heard about. Just the idea is kind of far-fetched, but there's a lot of people that talk about these two creations.
Well, I think that the major thing is going back to Genesis 1:26, and it says, and Elohim said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion. So, man, so we're saying at that point, or at least when we get up to Adam and Eve, was that just one man and one woman?
Hold on. You talking about chapter 1?
Well, yeah, well, starting with chapter 1 and then going up, because the consensus is, or what the dialogues I see concerning that is, at this point there were many peoples created during this time, and then there was a separate people, Adam and Eve, that was given that breath of life of his spirit to do the right thing. Rather.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying is that even though we see this 2 times, you see it over in 1 and 26 or whatever verse it is, 24, it's 26.
Yeah.
So we see it over there, and then we see this other account over here in Genesis 2. I'm saying that the key to understanding this is that this is not like a separate incident. It's a detailed account of what we already heard about from before. And what I'm saying is that the key is this whole idea. If you was to go and pull up all the 10 other instances where it begins the words, it begins the chapters or the subject matter with these are the generations. Every time it does that, it's not giving you a new thing, but it's giving you a detailed account of something that's already happened.
Right, that's right.
So if we was to say that this would be the only place where you have this be talking about a whole separate account out of all 11 times where it says it in the scriptures, this would be the one exception if we was to say that this was like a whole other thing that was going on. But when we see the pattern in the scriptures, it talks about this whole thing of these are the generations, and it's kind of setting you up to tell you about, it's going to give you details about something that you already know.
Right. So basically, like when we get further on, like we're in chapter 2, so you can make after verse 26, or actually maybe verse 27. He said
Of chapter 2.
Chapter 1.
Oh, chapter 1,
I'm
yeah.
saying, like, basically you can add these parts of the generations to it, like it will give them more detail of that.
Yeah. If you was going to put them all together, you could take 2 and stick it over in 1 with some parentheses on the side and stick it in there, because you just really just giving you more details, not as if there was a separate creation.
Right. So, like you're saying, like chapter 2 is expanding on chapter 1.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Where it is.
Right.
I think the other point contender too is how it speaks, like where it says they, and then as you get further, it'll say Adam and Eve, and speaking of them singular.
Hold on, what do you mean?
As a people, for instance.
Like, you talking about in the first chapter?
Well, yeah, how it says made in our image.
Coming from 1 to 2.
And then
yeah, because it's kind of a general statement in terms of, like, when you look back at chapter 1, where he talks about he made in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And then even in that, we have the same kind of an idea where in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And then it goes through now from verse 2 down into the details of what went into the creating of the heaven and the earth. So it's the same kind of a thing. We get down to 26 where it talks about, yes, indeed, Elohim created man and woman. But we see how woman was created. We see how the woman was formed from chapter 2. We don't see that. It's just like a blanket statement over in the first chapter. And then you get the details over in the second chapter. But like I say, I think that it's hard to make the case of 2 being a separate thing, mostly because of the examples in scriptures, which again there's at least 11 that I counted. I'm saying there could be more than that, but at least 11 that I counted that when it begins this thing with these are the generations, it's about to give you some details about something that has already happened, not as if it's like some thing that's disconnected, but it's just more details about another thing.
Well, the other side of why people would believe that there's 2 creations, but the other half of it is when it speaks about Adam and Eve, they only had 2 sons, and then they had wives. So if there was just those 2, where did they get the wives from?
Yeah.
I thought it said Cain went to the land of.
But we're talking about the creation of man.
Right.
How does the land of people get there if they're just Adam and Eve?
But I think that the problem is that we can't. I'm saying we can't make that assumption that, people do say that, but to say that you have to know where the other people came from in order to say that this is a separate, I think it's like you can't really make those two. You can't put those two things together. I don't think, because the scripture is not giving you that necessarily. It's not.
But the other people got to come from somewhere, though.
They do have to come from somewhere, but we don't have it's not given to us where they did come from.
That's the contention. That's the point.
But if I say because I don't have the answer, then this must be the answer.
Yeah, you can't.
That's not how you can't attack it like
don't
that.
tell you. Yeah, don't tell you.
Oh, right. I see.
You can't say because I don't know where these other people came from that means that there must have been two creations. Because again, like I'm saying, is that then that really makes this chapter 2 be an anomaly, because every other place is not giving you details about some other thing. It's just expounding on a thing that already happened. So you would have to be really kind of putting into the situation to say, well, I mean, it's a way for you to explain this is our problem. We don't have the answer. So we kind of make up an answer and then find out, well, we could say this is plausible.
Right.
If there was two creations, now we can explain those other people potentially that he went off and married.
I don't think there was two creations, but the difference from now and back then, they wait, like by the time they would have kids, and they would be like compared to us, they're like 50 and 60, starting their family. They're probably
You left. You said they was like old, like 50 and 60.
That's young back then. They was
just jumping off the porch.
Yeah.
I don't know what she talking about.
Like they were just focused on that particular people. Is it like there may have been other people, but they were focused on just
That's
how I always looked at it.
Yeah, that's what I, because we are the people. So it wasn't saying that it wasn't other people like you said, but I think that it's more so just talking about his people.
Yeah, that's the whole
history.
Well, also there's another problem with this whole idea of other people.
Because I even heard that Elleh had another wife.
Huh?
Yeah, but
I had heard before, like there was another.
Yeah, that's not. That's not in the book. Yeah.
Somebody told me that. I'm like,
did we read that? Did we read? I'm trying to see if we read the verse that's with one of my mom. Chapter. There is a verse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to see where it is. Believe naked. Hold on, is it in chapter 3 though? Hold on 1 second here.
They're coming in.
Where is that? I know I'm not making this thing up in my mind. Talks about Eve being the mother.
The mother of the earth.
Look at 320.
There it is.
What's that?
That is the next chapter.
Mother of all living.
Chapter what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it tells you that she is the
Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living.
Yeah.
So in that thought process, at least up to that point, if this is the second creation, she couldn't be the mother of all living because there was other people that was living from the first creation.
Right.
I know people that's going to come back at you and say, well, if you're not living, if you're not keeping the commandments.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll say that.
We're put in the Garden of Eden,
Yeah.
and the Most High put that spirit of life in them to keep the commandments. So
Mhm.
that's why she's the mother of living.
That's
People outside of that
they wasn't living yet.
So,
That's an interesting thought process. But again, that's something you got to add to the situation. You got to put things together in order to make it be that.
but they would go to precepts that say, if you're not keeping the commandments, you're in the congregation of the dead.
Right. But you had a point where the commandments really is just handed down. It's not even like it's not
Right. So she being the first created with that spirit and
Yeah.
Adam to know that her offspring would be the mother of living.
That's what you
See,
say.
that's
you
you
can't-
I'm telling you because I already had all.
Yeah,
That's
to me, it's you have to do a lot of kind of gymnastics in order to really get to that place because the scriptures ain't really telling you that. You can go and put 5 verses together and make it really say whatever you want for it to say. But when we look at what the scriptures is saying as it's saying it, I don't know how you get to that. You make up these answers in order to get answers to something that you don't understand.
Right.
I can't see how they could go off and have these wives with these other people, but we only talked about this one family. So now if I sit up here and come up with these things, well, maybe one is separate from 2. And then now you trying to find out these answers. But what I'm saying is that the scriptures is not telling you.
So it says in the Bible though that he did go out and marry someone
in
else
the land of Nod.
in the land of wherever the
Nod.
He went somewhere. He went somewhere, and
but it's in the scriptures.
It is in
Right?
the scriptures, yes.
So that is. if
But
we
now
go
the
back, this was
details-
in the scripture.
the details, yeah.
But if you go
But
back,
they
what's
got
in
there,
the
so
scripture-
I'm saying we can't put the details in though.
but sometimes look to me. Look,
But we're just talking about the scripture.
we don't got the whole book.
Yeah, they took things out.
We
and-
know this whole thing, like the whole story is not here.
We just got
Right.
what they gave.
But I feel that, like the scripture say, precept upon precept.
It is,
Sometimes
yeah. Line
certain
upon
other
line.
parts
Yep.
can fill in,
Yep.
can give you or insight to what may have happened. It ain't a because it's not.
Mhm.
I don't think it reads clear step by step. But we don't have it like that.
Yeah.
I just think that's really not important. I do think outside of
That's true.
the other people, I
That
do,
is true.
and I'm just
That is
using
true.
a common sense. I don't paint the story because honestly, I don't research that far.
Mhm.
That goes into what you said the other week about our mind. Like we have a mind that if you're reading the word, honestly, at the end of the day, that's really not important. But I do think there was other people. I don't think of it as the aspect of two separate creations, but I do believe that there was other people. But I just feel like the Bible's not focused on that, and I feel like people just focus so far on
Because we're human.
they just want to know, they want to answer to everything. And the answer's really not important. We can have a debate on like there's research.
Just a question, real quick. It's just a question. If we know that y'all got people, right, and how powerful he is, do you think that because they don't never really talk about the capacity and how powerful that the devil is, but you don't think that he got people? That's the way that
Well, you know what the
I'm
scripture
it's just a
does say
question.
he have a
Yeah.
seed. The scripture says in Genesis 3:15, it made it clearly that y'all will put enmity between the woman's seed and the serpent seed, which is Satan. So it's clear as day that he does have a seed. So if we was to take the woman's seed literally, then you're forced to take Satan's seed literally as well, because it's all in one sentence.
Right, it's right there.
You
It's
know?
just not important.
But what I actually get out of it myself,
Clear.
what I actually get out of it myself is through further research, I also discovered that the Bible we read today is not written in chronological order. You know, so there's dates and times that sporadically put here and near and near. You got to consider what the Council of Nicaea did with that. You know, they took time. Remember, the scriptures and Daniel said they think to change the dates and the times. So that applies to scripture as well. So they'll take historical documentation of dates and put them here and here according to their assumptions and what they assume to seem to be fitting. You understand? But like the Bible that I showed Tony was that's why Bible. It's very deep because they go in very detailed and it's very deep. They got epods of certain things that's according to time. And it's kind of hard to read because it'll have you bouncing back from Proverbs to Psalms, Isaiah to Jeremiah, but it's according to dates, not according to what they wrote at the Council of Nicaea.
Archaeology put that together. That's how
Yeah, basically a bunch of them, you know. But
I think that
but they speak about Israel highly.
I think Monet, you was on I think a little bit whenever you talk about this. Somebody else mentioned it too, but the Bible in and of itself is a record of a specific genealogy. We keep on going back all the way, then it kind of gets broad, but you know, as it narrows down, it gets to a specific line, and it's about a specific people, right? So I'm saying that just to say that we have the details about the line that we are connected to. If we was to say that, I'm saying that even if we was to say that there was some other people that was made some other way, I'm saying that they would still fall into the general thing of on the sixth day, the Most High created man. I don't say that there is some other people, but if we was to say it, I'm saying that the whole framework of like when we think about Shabbat, for instance, one of the reasons why we keep Shabbat is actually a we're memorializing the creation week. So we're saying that in 6 days he made everything that he was going to make. So I'm not saying that there was a separate creation, but if I'm saying that I keep the Shabbat and I memorialize the fact that in 6 days he created everything that he created, if I was going to say that there was a separate creation from the account that we have, I feel like it would have to have still been on the 6th day, just maybe over there somewhere.
Right.
I don't subscribe to that, but if I was to subscribe to it, I would still have to put that other thing that happened on the 6th day just over there somewhere in the unknown. But let's keep on going from there, because there's many more things for us to think about just even in the next couple verses here, right? So if we look at verse, let's see, verse 7. Verse 7. Oh, I'm on the wrong side of it.
Yahweh formed,
Yeah.
Yahweh Elohim formed the man out of the dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils breath of lives, and the man became a living being.
Oh, wait. Just to fall back just for a minute because of this verse here. When you have the it's interesting. So you had a group of people who talk about Israel being the 10 tribes actually being the people in Europe and Britain, right? White Israel.
Who said that?
the white Israel people, like the white nationalist religious ones,
Okay.
and the people, those people who connect themselves to Israel and say that they're the physical Israel. The way that they think about black people is kind of like what you were saying in terms of over here, the life was breathed into them, right? And they was made into a living soul, right? So they think about this how they think about black people as being pre-Adamic, and therefore they don't have a soul like them, who they're real humans, and these other people are this other thing, these soulless creatures,
Yeah.
soulless creatures, right? Who don't have this verse 7 thing here. So they're, that's how, we're not even humans, not even part of the human race. Like we're just some whole other thing.
That's why they studied on us. So what they did, they were even saying we had extra muscles in our legs, better jump faster. And yes, where our skull was shaped, it was it was crazy.
Okay, but I didn't want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about how Elohim formed man out of the dust. Chris must be here. So I want to look at this word here, formed, right? Because over in we see how we see how over here it talks about this forming. What is this word here? Form. Yatsar. The squeezing into shape, to mold into a form, especially as pottery, to determine to fashion or frame, to make purpose or pottery. So it talks about here the way that the Most High actually took that earth, he took that dirt, that dust of the ground, and actually formed man. And the word that's being used is the same word that every other time we see it talks about kind of this, like this shaping, kind of how it is. You think about how a potter, when he got that little wheel where he's making that wheel spin and he's sitting there, pressing that thing and forming it and shaping it. I always think about that movie with Ghosts, where they kind of made that pottery like this real intimate thing, where they're sitting there making this clay. Ghost. You ever see that? Yeah. The hoary head. Yeah.
Rise for the hoary headed.
Hisky, move out the way. Don't
That
make
means rise for the gray head.
Nah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so when we think about this, that's funny. What
was your thought process on what you were saying about how they feel that black people are pre-Adamic?
Because here in this creation here, these people got the breath blowed into them and they became a living soul, where the other people didn't.
So they kind of got the same.
So the reverse, right?
Yeah, I watched something last night on how, they say that Noah's Ark landed in the Caucasus Mountains, and this is how the Caucasian race came.
Up in Georgia, Russia.
Yeah. Right. But okay, so but we want to get into this idea of forming. So when we think about, we always talk about the fact that Adam was here, was made from the dust of the ground. But I want to think about the idea of the Most High actually, we're this word that's translated as formed. There is some actual kind of like when we think about all of the things, like he spoke and caused um the grass and stuff to grow and the trees and all that stuff, and he spoke and caused the light to come. He spoke and caused the waters to divide in the firmament and all of that. But when it talks about the man, it talks about how he formed the man. He didn't just speak to the dust. It don't talk about him speaking to the dust. It used this word yatsar, which has to do with actual kind of forming, as if he like got his hands dirty. There's the intimacy that's implied even in just a word, because he could have used any word. He could have just said he created man out of the. He could have said bara, Elohim bara, like it said over in how he created the heavens and the earth. But this yatsar word is used, which makes it more kind of intimate.
Yeah, it gotta almost like it gotta be that, because even if you just think about just our bodies, just period, and like with your white blood cell, how everything knows how to. It's definitely something more than just speaking. You know what I mean? Just the way that your body just grows.
I mean, I mean, the human body is an amazing thing, absolutely, but all nature is that way. All nature is that way. When you take it down to the molecules and all that stuff, you look at it. A tree is the same way.
Oh, we just watched something about how the sun, like if the sun is perfectly where it's supposed to be at from Earth. If it's too far,
it's like a degree off on everything. Everything else. It's so perfect. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
In that perspective, I think we are just like minuscule when it comes to just the grand of the whole thing of it. Yeah.
But at the same time, though, right? At the same time, this is what I'm saying about this intimacy thing, about this yatsar word. There, we can look and see the vastness of creation and how amazing that it is. But I think just from this word here, there's special attention that's put on man, right? And in terms of like the intricacies of it, I mean, it's all amazing. All of it is.
Yeah.
But the human body is definitely just as amazing, if not more so, than all of these other things.
It's a universe in itself.
Yeah.
It's a universe in itself.
Like how your eye can clean itself. I'm like,
It's a universe within itself.
But you never notice how you'll see certain plants and vegetables in the form of human bodies. You ever see that?
Body
got
parts.
A whole
Yeah.
bunch of pictures of them, man.
They need parts.
Yeah, like they look like a woman's body and a man's foot.
Oh yeah.
You know, I find that very amazing, man. When I look at stuff like that, I be like, man, y'all, you amazing.
What I was
You
gonna
know?
say, what I was gonna say is that nothing else in creation can say it was created in the image.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's that.
Yeah.
Then there's that. Yeah.
So I would call that stuff.
Exactly. That's probably why you took the time, because it said.
Yeah.
After our likeness, you know. But you can see a signature on all creation. That's what I'm talking about. But he took his time creating man. Now that was a specific thing right there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He was showing off his skills when he did that. You know.
Okay, so let us keep on going here. We look at 8 and 9.
Ready?
Yeah, just read 8 and 9 again.
And Yah Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east. And there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground, Yah Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasing to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the middle of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Okay, so now it begins to talk about this Garden of Eden. Later we see down, let's see, in the following verses where it starts to give you some coordinates. It talks about these different rivers and things. It names some places that we can that we're able to identify in terms of we can look on a map and find these things. Just without knowing any of these things, I know of Cush and I know of the Euphrates, right? There's still a water over there right now that they call the Euphrates, right? So it's talking about a location that we can find in terms of the land and the water that is named, a place that we could find on our maps today, at least roundabout anyway. But I wanted to look at this verse 9, right, where it talks about out of the ground Elohim made every tree to grow. Out of the ground Elohim made every tree to grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the midst of the garden and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, there's either a lot going on right here, or I'm just thinking about this too much. Because I get stuck in this first part of this sentence where it says Elohim made every tree to grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. But everything that is named in this verse right here is actually not pleasant to the sight and good for food. Because if we look down in verse 16 and 17, Elohim commanded the man saying, eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of knowledge and good and evil, for in that day you will surely die.
Because he said pleasant to sight, right?
Well, there's two criteria: it's pleasant to sight and good for food.
Good for food. But I don't think that he was putting it together. I think he was saying he made it. There was some that was pleasant to sight, and there was some that was because the tree of knowledge. It was beautiful. That's what made them actually. You know what I mean? It was pleasant to the sight.
Oh, you saying the tree of knowledge and good and evil was pleasant to sight?
To sight.
What's saying?
Because that's
saying that miss.
Don't people look good?
There you go.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it may look good, but I'm trying to figure out if it says that it was pleasant to the sight.
Okay, and out of the ground, Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and is good for food.
Well, in the Bible,
but
pleasant, though, because when
I'm trying to figure out if the tree of knowledge and good and evil is called by the Almighty as being pleasant
inside
to the sight. We already know it wasn't good for food.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that it was neither one of those things.
Because it said out of the
because
ground,
we just seen over there where he said don't eat it, so it couldn't have been pleasant. It couldn't have been good for food because he said don't eat it.
He said every tree.
But was it pleasant for the sight though?
Yeah, there was a verse that I read, not this one, but when the serpent. I can't put it up, but it was like when the serpent told Eve she can eat of that fruit. Mm-hmm. After he said that to her and told her she went and died, when she looked at it, it looked good. Like now, like it was more so.
But that was a lie though.
Wait, what was he was a deceiver.
Yeah, he was a deceiver, but it's like now that he didn't said that.
I'm saying it was never the Most High didn't never say that it was pleasant to the sight. That was the lie, that it was pleasant to the sight. And then that's how the whole situation came down. But the point that I'm trying to bring out here is that we seeing that Elohim made every tree that was pleasant. He made every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. I'm saying, how did that tree of knowledge and good and evil get in there where it wasn't good for food or pleasant to the sight? That's all I'm saying. And then for that matter, if you want to move forward, how did that deceptive Nakash get in there either? Well, I don't want to get into Nakash because we're gonna look at this at the third chapter. But for now, I'm just saying we talk about what Elohim made every tree that was pleasant to the sight and good for the food. I'm saying there's this other tree that's there, but it's neither pleasant to the sight nor good for food.
Oh, so it didn't say it was pleasant.
No, I don't see where it says it is pleasant. Where is it? It don't never say that it's pleasant.
Yeah, where's this says it was pleasant at in the scripture?
It's like down, not from the Most High.
It is said that it is pleasant, but
No,
that's the
I'm
lie.
saying where the Most High said it.
Oh yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It just say it's like a bland right there. If you go up, some and say in the midst of the garden.
So somebody else made that tree is what we're saying.
Wait, I'm not saying that necessarily. Well, I guess I'm kind of saying that. I'm kind of saying it, but I'm just. I kind of said it.
The knowledge of good and evil. So they're in the midst of it. So were they just there and didn't grow?
Well,
what that scripture is saying?
Well, I'm saying that the tree of life is pleasant to the tree of life.
That says in the midst. It says pleasant to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the midst of the garden and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So are we saying that they were just there, or did they grow there or not?
And are they both?
Because they're both saying it's in the midst. It says in the midst.
It says in the. It says in the midst.
Right in the midst.
And
you know what?
We have to assume. We have to. I'm saying that we could assume the tree of life is good for food because it don't tell you. It don't tell you not to eat it like it tell you not to eat the tree of knowledge and good and evil.
Right.
So I think that it would be safe to assume that it was good for food because he never told you not to eat it until you ate the other one. Then he told you that you couldn't eat of it. But up to this point, it's kind of fair game. He don't put no restrictions on the tree of life. But what you saying is interesting because we have this place
at that moment
that the Most High put Adam. In the midst of that place are these things that are there, this tree of life and this tree of the Most High made the things to grow that was in this place, those things which were good for food and pleasant to the sight. But then you have this other thing in there that's not good for food and is not pleasant to the sight. And someone could make the argument that it's something that wasn't included in this whole making tree to grow piece. Potentially, I'm saying.
I want to add to that pleasant to the sight. Like, no, it doesn't say that he said it was pleasant, but it's just like today. Like, if there's I think you used this one. Somebody used it. Like, if there's a pin on the ground that we're supposed to be picking up for the Most High, it's going to be surrounded in similar. It's not going to like the enemy. So I think that you did say that. I think the tree was pleasant to the sight. It doesn't say that he said that, but I think that it was because that's why.
So you going on common sense, basically.
Yeah, because why wouldn't it be?
It wasn't.
Why would it be all bald head?
Right.
Why would it be something not pleasant something that looks like don't eat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it's just
gonna,
this thorns,
that.
thorns.
yeah, thorns later on. That's not. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just common sense. There's
Yeah,
no way it was
yeah.
an ugly
I
tree
can go with
looking
that.
all
I can
evil.
go
And
with
it's all
that.
these other trees, and you just like, I'm gonna eat
Like, who's
this
gonna want to
apple.
eat that shit?
I can go with that because the narrator of the writing of it was basically speculating that it was.
Yeah.
Just like
Just like it happens today.
Just like today.
Yeah,
Everything
just like
is
today.
either be pleasant to the eye. How
Yeah,
could
it's
this-
gonna be
it's just-
pleasant,
Yeah.
but we
But
are
we have the
told
choice,
what not
and that's
to eat.
where our
period.
choices come in.
Right.
I mean,
Even to
okay, well
practice this
let's think about this. If somebody fries up, I never had a fried pork chop before.
My grandma made a good one.
But I'm sure that somebody could fry up a pork chop and that thing look delicious.
Hey, I go down, they gonna see shrimp and crab legs. Look delicious.
I could swear.
like chicken.
I don't know.
No, this is not your area.
I'm just saying somebody could make up a pork chop and that thing, if I didn't know it was a pork chop, I could probably look at it and be like, that thing is pleasant to the sight. But it ain't though, really.
No,
though.
it ain't. Because my grandma used to make liver look like steak and it was pleasant to the sight. Until I start eating it, I spit that stuff.
I'm saying if the most high hates evil, right?
Yeah.
Evil's not something, I'm saying evil with parentheses over it. It's not always something that has an evil look necessarily.
He always said it'll be a trap for you.
So I think that this is just my thoughts. It's not like right and wrong. I'm saying I'm thinking that these things are coupled together here. And the pleasant to the sight thing I would say that it must be kind of a relative thing, as if to say, in terms of how the perception of it should be. I could look at like a one of those them Venus fly traps, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it, this is an amazing thing, like, but I can, when I know what it does, it will cause me to look at it as like a, some undesirable thing. So I think kind of as maybe aesthetically to look at this thing, we could look at it and say, maybe the tree of knowledge and good and evil looked away. But I think the point of it was to kind of putting that stamp on it to say, well, it needs to actually be in this other category where I'm not looking at it. So when I talk to people about pork, for instance, and people sit up here and try to talk about making it, praying over it and making it clean, right? But in terms of in the biblical narrative, we never looked at a pig and thought of it as food.
Right.
It's not food. The same way you think about a rat.
Right.
Like you don't think of it as food. So I'm never going to put it in that category of food to even think about eating it.
Depends who you are, though.
Well, I'm saying we never looked at it like that,
Chinese
right?
be fighting over rat legs. I want a rat leg.
When the Europeans were starving here, they ate the dead. So I'm sure they never looked at, and we
Caves, yeah.
in 70 AD, you know what I mean? So
Not on purpose, not.
I'm saying this idea of pleasant to the sight, I think is more of a frame of mind, more so than the physical makeup of it, because they was able to just get that bug in their ear and be like, maybe it is pleasant to the sight and good for the
maybe it didn't
food.
even look like the standard tree, like how you're saying it. Like how these trees looked that grew up, they looked a certain way. This one was like it didn't look like.
I think it had to have had a distinct look
Right.
to know what it was. Go ahead.
So, this is my thought. And, I think that, the Most High, even putting the tree of good and evil in the garden next to the tree of life, in the midst with the tree of life, I think it's, a common thread throughout the whole scripture to where, we are faced with a choice. You know what I mean? Going through the whole scripture and to this day, to where he doesn't want robots. He wants us to choose the right one. You know what I mean? So
Right.
he gave us free will so that we would freely choose them. I think he's building, a team per se that is going to choose him over evil.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he's removing the presence of evil nowhere in the scripture. It's all around us.
He just
all
leaves
the
it right
time,
there.
but he is picking those who are choosing him over that tree.
And I just want to add that whole mind thing, like how he was just talking about a little bit ago about people going to that aspect of wanting to know it was a second creation. That thing planted in your that thing planted in Eve's mind to even want to even have a desire for this. Like now you want to know, but because they didn't know good or evil. Like they didn't know they was naked. They didn't have that type of. So just now, that little thought placed in there to let me just taste this fruit. Like now I want to taste this.
Yeah.
But it would have never even have been thought of. Like that extra touch to that mind, that like that peak in your subconscious, and like, look at that. It is. Let me get a piece now. But the whole time you was cool. You wasn't even thinking about it.
I think something to also think about, if we think about the tree of life and what it represents, right? We can connect the tree of life clearly to Yeshua, right? We could definitely connect the tree of life to Yeshua and everlasting life, like that intimate connection, right? And then so when you had that initial transgression, it made it impossible for them in that state to partake of the tree of life. But what would have happened then if it would have been reversed? Instead of going towards the knowledge first, they went for the tree of life first, and then they would be able to deal with the knowledge, right? But so they went for the knowledge first, and then that messed the situation up, because when you think about it, like we have the knowledge, we like you talking about making these choices, right? They went into this situation with the knowledge first. Knowledge, we need the knowledge, but it got to be on the strength of life first. This is a problem that we have, even in this day, where I'm coming to this till this day.
Hold up, knowledge of self.
We coming, you're right. You dealing with this knowledge thing first, and you got all of this kind of information first, and you don't got no connection, no intimacy to life, who is Yeshua, right? So they went around, they skipped a step. Let me see about this thing over here. Right. Meanwhile, the thing that you was able to come to, you wasn't even thinking about the thing that you was able to go to get, that tree of life.
Right. Can I add something on that?
Go ahead.
What I found real interesting, just by you saying that just now, what hit me in the download of the Ruach was how you said the tree of life was in the midst of the garden, right? Well, I thought about Daniel's prophecy when he talked about the Messiah will hold a covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week, he'll be cut off, but not for himself. So I started thinking about that, the tree of life associated with Yeshua. Yeshua was sacrificed in the midst of the week. So that was the life given in which Adam and Eve neglected. And they sought their knowledge first, which we do today. Many don't understand that the tree of life was sacrificed for us in the midst of the week, but a lot of us don't run to it and try to eat from it. Instead, we seek to eat from the knowledge of good and evil. Oh, knowledge of self. The ancestors said this and all this and all that, without even acknowledging the one who became a sacrifice for our sins and hope, which caused a lot of people to fall in error and false awakening without pain and joy. You understand?
When you think about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or just thinking about the idea of having the knowledge of good and evil, you know, part of the thing that the Most High said was it. I think it says it in the other chapter. If you eat of, after they ate of it, they're like Elohim now. So if you was to put that on Elohim in terms of the knowledge of good and evil, you can't say that in and of itself, knowledge of good and evil is some evil thing.
Right.
It's not an evil thing. It's just a knowledge of good and evil.
But now you know.
Now you made it harder. You made it harder on yourself.
They hear when we read this, my 13-year-old said, "Wow!" Like, so basically, prior to this, because she was listening to the curses that the Most High spoke to the woman and to the man, so she's like, "Wow!" Now we got to go through this. Now she was like, so basically, prior to that, we just had the opportunity to just live our best life, like wake up, go eat hairs, like it was. Yeah, you just there was no type of requirements besides living your life.
Have that connection.
She said that she's like so basically we could have just been living our best life, like with no worry, no stress, just life.
Yeah.
Now you know right from wrong. Now you got a million choices to make on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Let me so I ain't gonna jump out the window because so we can move on. But what my school side, I me personally, I look at this as allegorical because I don't think that these were trees like trees. Because I mean, if you look at a shadow, but you know how Yeshua was referring to people and how he sowed seeds and seeds would fall away, and then he referred to men as trees and how they grew and how they would bear fruit. All this. Me personally, I look at it as either peoples or nations that was the trees, and then he had a separate the good tree that he gave that knowledge and information to, and then those other trees maybe other nations, and other nations dealing with other nations and making decisions based off of that. But it's real crazy. I ain't trying to jump out the window. Kind of did, but that's my mindset because it's too simple to just be like, mess with this tree, don't mess with that tree. A snake come and tell you don't. No,
I think that
it's more than that.
I think that it potentially is a kind of mixture. I would say of what you're saying. When we think about Revelation and talks about the eternal kingdom with the tree. And in the river that flows out from the tree, and we think about again thinking about Messiah, you know, and the leaves,
he would be that
the
tree.
Leaves from the tree, you know, providing healing for the nation, right? Right. So I think that it to me, I feel like it has to be some type of mixture of the both. But the thing that we want to get from it, I think, is not necessarily is it like a tree, like some wood that grows, but that which is represented of it, which definitely one is bringing you to that connection to the Almighty, and the other one is causing you to be separated from Him. And you could take it apart from that and say maybe it's not necessarily the tree in and of itself, because the Most High has a knowledge of good and evil, but it's about that obedience or lack thereof and eating from it, where He said don't eat it, whatever it is. If it's whatever that thing is, He said don't do it, and then you did it anyway.
Right.
So therefore, you're forfeiting your right to this intimacy that's afforded to you on the other side with the. I'm not married to this idea of actual trees, because it could be that, or maybe it ain't that. But I think that the point is that you, on one side you have this thing that's definitely connected to eternal life.
Mhm.
And on the other side, you have this thing that the Most High said for that time, don't eat it, don't partake of it,
And you'll surely die.
and you'll surely die as a result of it.
Straight. He didn't say when, but you definitely.
Yeah, well, I think it meant spiritually.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
Well, they lived
because
they lived for hundreds of years. They didn't.
Right.
If we're talking,
Something was like spiritual.
physical, yeah, but you look at a physical tree, but if you go right to the spirit, how's it gonna be a tree?
Well, you know,
So
I
then
think,
you
I
gotta-
think they actually had a party in the garden because afterwards, listen to the curses. Talks about seed, you know what I'm saying, and enmity between the woman's seed and the serpent seed.
Yeah, I think
she has sons, and
Yeah,
Cain
that's-
and Abel,
that's-
and one's a killer, and one's, you know what I mean.
I think that's too far. That's just too far.
That's what I'm saying. You get crazy.
That's too far, because I see what you're saying, but that could be dispelled just from just the following chapter from that. But let's keep on going. I see what you. I definitely understand exactly what you talk about over there. And people take it to that spot for sure, though. Okay, so let's see where we at here. If we go down, let's go down to okay, so if we look at real quick 20, look at real quick 20, 19 and 20 talks about the beasts of the field and them being brought before Adam, and him giving each of them names. And Adam at this time is given this opportunity to look and see how these animals, even these very animals, within their situation are able to, they all have their counterparts.
Right.
And he is able to feel, because animals, again, we're animals. People get offended. We're animals. But there's something that differentiates us, over and above just the animals, but we are still animals, intelligent ones, but animals nonetheless. But even animals in themselves are able to, find counterparts with each other, right? They're able to have levels of intimacy amongst themselves.
Right.
But the man at this point, he did not have that, right? So we see, we see that where the man was able to even just see from a personal experience that he needed something. Something was missing from his situation. Okay, so then we see the drawing out of Hava, of Eve there, taking out from his ribs.
Woo, man. Like we said before, he can feel it in his sleep, right? Oh my goodness.
And then it goes down and talks about the joining of them together. I knew somebody who always talk about this verse 23, this thing that the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. He used to always talk about this as this being we looking at this and it's just like, it don't seem like it's like excitement, but this person that I used to know and talk about this as if, imagining you the first time you're seeing this woman that, probably at this point was the most beautiful thing that you ever seen, like.
Mhm.
And just what what that would be like experiencing this. First you got this feeling of loneliness when you're looking and seeing all these animals, how they're able to have their other mates and counterparts and so on and so forth. And now finally you have yours. He probably woke up out of his anesthesia and seeing this woman. Like, wow. Um, I just always thought that was funny. Okay, but I wanted to pay attention. Okay, so does anybody have any thoughts about any of that stuff before I look at verse 25 here? So anything up to 25
Yeah, I'll say
jump
something
out
about that
at
real
you?
quick.
What?
With everything on the whole thing that jumped out at me was people sometimes jump to conclusion and actually think this stuff happened in a matter of weeks or whatnot. Because like my cousin would say, well, ain't no other children come until after Seth. I said, yeah, well, that might be true according to scripture, but we don't know how long it took. We don't know.
The mind just be so focused on the wrong things.
Yeah, they do. It's
But,
not
I mean,
important.
It's definitely more to it, but it's not important. That's the main
It don't have
fact.
nothing to do with
There
salvation.
has been research studies with facts, and that's power of the mind is crazy, especially when you focus so far on naturally focus so far on I gotta get the answer to this. But it's just not important at the end of the day. You focus so far on that, it's a distraction, and you're straight away from. Doesn't matter.
Okay, so all right. Anybody else have any thoughts where you look at verse 25? Okay, so let us look at this verse 25. So we have the joining of Adam and Hava. He must have been so excited to finally have his counterpart. They become one flesh. Verse 25 says, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, yet they were not ashamed. They were not ashamed. Um, you can think about this. I always think about this as something that's very important, but because it's so plain, it's hard to kind of see the importance. The first time I looked at this, I thought about like a child. They're not really thinking of anything. Don't run around running here right now, just butt naked. Right? Right. It's a little baby. They don't know what's going on. They just run around, just whatever. Right. So I will always think about this like that in terms of, it's the two of them. They don't have any kind of weird feelings about anything, right? No inhibitions. They're just free, like they're naked. They're not ashamed. Um, but I want to look at this. I want to look at this word over here, and then I want to move on because when we get to the other chapter, we're gonna see the same situation over here. So I think the word is this word here that's translated as naked. Naked, right? The word is arum. Yeah. Arum, meaning naked. It can allude to physical nakedness. It can also be used figuratively to relate to one who has no possessions. Moreover, Sheol is described as being naked before Elohim, a statement of its openness and vulnerability to Elohim and his power. So this word that's always translated as to mean nude or totally or partially nude. From the physical perspective, there's think about something that's bare, that's uncovered, there's not in this situation. We see that there's no shame that's attached to it. It's just childlike, it's free. But it speaks to the essence of man. They were here at their kind of basic essential form, here looking at each other in their nakedness. Now I just wanted to bring that up because we're going to go to the next chapter and we'll see this word again in another situation. It's kind of like making you think about this thing without spilling the beans about it all the way until we look at the next chapter. Okay. All right. So let's look over at chapter 3. Chapter 3 and read down to 21. Chapter 3, verse 1 down to 21.
And the Nahash was more crafty than all the lives of the field which Yah Elohim had made, which is serpent. And he said to the woman, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to Nahash, the serpent, we are to eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the Nahash serpent said to Eve, the woman, you shall certainly not die. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. Loin coverings for themselves. And they heard the voice of Yah Elohim walking about in the garden in the cool of the day. I'm going to say that again. Walking about in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yah Elohim among the trees of the garden. And Yah Elohim called unto Adam and said to him, where are you? And he said, here, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And he said, who made you know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat? And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree and I ate it, tattletale. And Yah Elohim said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the Nahash serpent deceived me and I ate. Another tattletale. And Yah Elohim said to Nahash, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all livestock and more than every beast of the field. Check this out, y'all. On your belly, you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your headship, and you shall crush his heel. To the woman, he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception. Bring forth children in pain. Labor, and your desire is for your husband, and he does rule over you. Let me say that one more time, brother. And your desire is for your husband, not every other man, and he does rule over you. And to the man, he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it. Curse is the ground. Curse is the ground because of you, and in toil you are to eat of it all the days of your life. Farming, and the ground shall bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you are to eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you return. And the man called his wife named Hawa, because she became the mother of all living, the mother of all living. And Yah Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his wife and dressed them.
Okay, so let's go back up to verse 1. And straight away, we are able to go back to our thoughts about this whole thing with this.
The trees now make a little bit more sense. I'm not thinking about the extra stuff that they're not trees, but the trees now it just seemed like the other trees might have been more like in the unison, and these ones were like just in the center, not surrounded with the other trees. They probably were like, I'm thinking of it as like a I don't know, like you ever go to like what is it like down like a center, like if you're going into like the walkways, like the waterfront, it's like a center where like, so I'm thinking that's how it was more, them trees were set apart from the rest of the
Distinct.
Huh?
You saying like distinct, like
yes, they
separated.
were like they're trees, but they were like set apart, like they weren't with the like when they woke up. This is just my thoughts on it. When they woke up and they did pick from what they ate, it was like going to like a food bank or something. That's where everything pretty much was all together. And here in the midst is these two. They weren't surrounded. Yeah, so just
yeah. They were. It talks about them being in the midst. They were there on display. Not hidden. For all to see in the midst of that garden. But there a right choice had to be made in regards to dealing with those. But we're gonna get back to the trees now. If we look at verse 1 of chapter 3, it talks about verse 3 and Nakash it's translated as serpent. In the Hebrew, Nakash comes from the sound that the snake makes, the serpent, right? It's translated as serpent. The word Nakash again comes from the sound that the snake makes, the serpent makes, but in English it's translated as serpent. But it speaks about Nakash and says that it was more crafty than all the lives of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. So when you think about this word, let's look at this word. When you think about this word craftiness, what does that cause you think about in terms of the skill set of this Nakash, in terms of him dealing with, when we read what he did in this situation?
Just how the devil, just how Satan, the devil, he's crafty.
he was very
he
smart.
deceived the whole world. He was crafty.
He was
like just even
smart.
how he got into religion and people just thinking that they're just doing this, and like he was very crafty. Nothing new is under the sun. So I think it's just the way that we actually look at it, because sometimes when we think about back in those times or something, we think that it was like something different. They were human beings just like we're humans right now. It was no, you know what I mean? It was no different. It's just how we are right now. It's just how he's crafty now. He will deceive you and make you think something else than what it really is. Like it's the same thing.
I think
it's the same thing to me. That's basically what
I think that, but I also think like what you said about how we're all animals, and other animals don't have the mind that we have. As far as, like we said, a bird's not wondering why he can fly or why he automatically chirps in the morning or whatnot. This serpent was craftier, obviously, than, like, I believe he just had a bigger mindset, a different mindset outside of the other animals.
When you think about animals, we can't communicate with animals, so we don't know what they're doing.
Right.
But when people watch animals, I'll never forget, I watched this thing about wolves. And wolves, like dogs, they run in packs, but there's hierarchy in the pack. So this young wolf, as he was growing up, decided that he was going buck up against the head of the pack. And they was watching how they was acting. These wolves literally exiled this other wolf, and there was like a circumference of their territory where that wolf would not come back over this little like borderline, where he went off, but he went off, right, and got stronger, and over time, and then when he came back and beat the guy and took over the thing. Right? I'm saying the guy like this was like a movie or something. But it's wolves though.
Right.
He knew that until he got strong, he wasn't going to be able, he could not come back over this line until he got able and strong enough and grew to come back and beat the leader and then take over. But all of this stuff happened just from observation. You was able to see all of this stuff happen. But I'm saying all that just to say they doing all kinds of stuff that we don't know what they doing because we don't communicate with them. We could look at them and kind of ascertain what they're doing just from looking. But if they could talk to us, Amanda, what they would be.
Well, we watched the whole Great Migration and watched the salmon? They swim like how they do one big circle, like how it goes, like, and the bears know when it's salmon time, like they know when to go. Like here they come, like it'll be at that time of the year, but it's a process. It's not like a day. This is like a process. The time of the year they know when it's time to go. Like, come on.
So I mean, to a degree, you can look at it and chalk it up as just instinctual. Something about your body just tells you if you wake up the same time for 20 years at the same time every day, you just with an alarm clock. When it gets to the time for you to forget about the alarm clock, you probably gonna still wake up at that day because it then become instinct. And you could chalk some of it up to instinct, but at the same time, there's some other things going on in there. But I'm saying all that just to say, when we think about this Nakash and his craftiness, is dealing with kind of his internal makeup. Something within himself was able to get him. He was able to use a specific skill set in order to achieve the thing that he was going to be achieving in terms of his manipulation. So we can't talk about this here, this whole situation with the fall of man, without thinking about what people talk about as the original sin. The fact that as because of we always look back and say because of this, because of this thing that happened here, now every time a baby is born, he's a sinner just by virtue of being born, and he needs to be renewed just for some fact of being a human. Um, everybody know what I'm talking about here in terms of original sin, like that little baby right there, just because what's that little girl right there? Look at her. Look at her. Okay, so that little baby girl right there is she's just a little sinner, right? Just because she's a human being, right? This is the thought, right? So, but I want to look at this word, right? Nakash was more subtle. He was more subtle, therefore, so he was more than the rest. The other beasts were subtle.
Yeah.
He was more than that.
Yeah, I think he was like had a distinct look prior
Is he
to
the
it.
most
I
subtle
think-
of his kind?
Well, most
So
more.
the beast was
I'm saying most or more, but what I'm saying is that if it's saying most or more, if I was going to say you're stronger than me, I might be strong, but you're stronger than me, right? So we both got strength, but you're just more strong, or you're the most strong. So I'm saying that there's something that's
set apart for this.
something that's the same between him and everybody else.
You ever see why you look up?
Well, it's right here. I have it.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead.
You ever see that show where it was like when we were younger, and they had the lizard people lived in the earth. They came out at night.
You mean Land of the Lost?
Land of the Lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Fleece Stacks.
Yeah.
I remember all that
I
stuff.
think that the Kosh was something like that.
Yeah, I think it was something more because the whole Kurt when he says now the belly,
Yeah.
like
I'm
now
about to
you
tell
got
you.
so obviously them
You
snakes
had
wasn't on their
feet.
belly. And they wasn't on their belly. And people brings up the dragon stuff, but that all could have been something else because this is could have been from something
That's
else.
why I was going to ask y'all still think it's a snake.
Yeah, but
Actually,
Yeah.
you know what?
I mean, that I think that's why the scriptures don't say serpent. It just leaves it at Nakash.
Because, right.
Without saying that, and I think that it pulls you away from trying to figure out that whole situation. Because
I think it was like a lizard or something.
I mean that's what I mean. But I'm saying that the reason I think that the scriptures here leaves it out is just to kind of just
Take it away from
because it's one of those things where
But like when I
we
was
don't
doing my
have all of
studies,
the information.
details.
But before we go into that, I'm saying about this craftiness, where here is translated as cunning, crafty, prudent, subtle, shrewd, a shrewd sensibility. This adjective can be either positive or negative connotation. It's understood to being prudent. Individual takes no offense at an insult. Does not flaunt knowledge, takes careful thoughts, so on and so forth. But
Real quick, because what one definition that's not in there says it's being transliterated or whatever.
for
The cost.
okay, yeah.
For when it consists as craft or crafty.
Oh yeah, for crafty, yeah.
The regular definition in the if you get a dictionary, one of the
You talking about of the word crafty?
Yeah.
What do it say?
Craft, a skill used to deceive others.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a straight flat definition. One of the definitions. So just want to throw that in
Yeah. Okay. So if we think about that, and then adding to the fact that remember, well, we talked about Adam and Hava. It says were naked.
Mm-hmm.
You see that word right there? This is crafty.
Crafty. Haroon.
See this word right here? This is naked.
I recognize that thing.
You see that? That's naked right there. That's naked.
No, I'm talking about that.
This right here. That's crafty.
Look at the T number.
What's the difference?
That's just now.
But that's a 3 dots, another T.
Huh?
That's 3 dots, a T,
second
another letter.
That's
I'm talking about from vocabulary.
a vowel point.
That's 3 dots.
It says our
That's a
room.
dot
That's
right
that
up under
T.
the line.
It
That's
says
a dot up under the line.
This one is our room,
No, I know that. But
and
I'm
the other
talking
ones is our room.
Yeah,
So the
that's-
vowel points are different,
Yeah, that's
but as far as the root, it's the same word.
No, he's trying to figure out. He was saying that's the you know how you
I
got
thought
the
it
3
was a
dots, the 3 dots that make.
Oh yeah, this
That's
is the
the
ah
ah.
sound, and
That's the
then
ah
this
sound.
is the o sound.
Yeah, we learned
So this is our room, and this is our room. But what I'm saying is that this naked word is essentially the same word as this crafty word. So when we look at crafty, we're thinking about how this was the kind of the innate kind of thing within Nakash, this craftiness, this what did the definition say? This ability to be able to deceive, this cunningness.
A skill used in deceiving others.
So this is something that Nakat was present in Nakash, but I'm saying that whatever is present in Nakash is also present in Adam and Hava. Whatever that is, before they did anything, they didn't do nothing. They was both naked and they wasn't ashamed. They had something inside of them already. It wasn't really like a thing like
But
that.
he was basically more crafty.
Well, he was more crafty,
Yeah.
it says, right?
They didn't have the knowledge to know
So
what's wrong. They didn't have awareness. It had to get brought out.
You're right, and what I'm saying is that whatever it is that is in man, I'm saying it was already in man,
Right.
and the only difference now is just knowledge.
Right.
It's not like they ate something and they got something on them, like they just became aware of things. But you still a human being.
Right.
But you wasn't changed. Like it wasn't like you ate it and this sin just took over you. Like right, it's just awareness.
Is it
Because you already had this thing that Nakash had.
Right.
You already had it in you.
But you can look at it.
Because-
You go first because mine's gonna be different. So go ahead.
I mean, is that what you're saying? Like a little bit, almost like when he said we were made in the likeness of him, because it's basically in everybody, but you just have to bring it out of yourself.
What's gonna be the thing that's manifest? If we're created in the image of the Almighty, right? So even right there, we just stop right there in His image. How's there wickedness in that necessarily? Unless we talk about what the thing that's manifest. So I'm saying that when we talk about this idea of original sin, just because you're a human being that's born, you have sin in you, just as a baby coming out. I'm saying a baby coming out is just like them. They had that potential that could go either way, but then it quickly goes the other way. But I'm saying that with that potential is there. Whatever Nakash had, it was in them too. The same thing was in them. Before we even get to the interaction that they had, and then the manifestation of the interaction, which was the eating of the fruit or the partaking of this knowledge of good and evil. But I'm saying that the thought that a human being, we talk about this idea of original sin. We talk about, just because a baby's born now, you're a born sinner. That's what I'm saying. No, I do not believe that. That little baby don't know how to think. How did she sin then?
How can you transgress the law?
But that's why. But that's why I said that.
Well, you could transgress it without knowing it.
Yeah,
But what I'm saying is that a baby ain't thinking about anything.
Right.
Now my little babies are older now. That's different. Now they start to think. You can tell when they start getting bad, that's that ego that's rising up and saying everything is about me. I need my stuff, and ain't nobody gonna sit up here and tell me that I can't have my stuff. Right. And so that ego starts to rise up, and then they just become just little sinners. Right. They just start transgressing all over the place. But I'm saying it takes manifestation of that ego inside of you to bring you to that place. Not where you, because if we say something different, then now we got to think about if Yeshua was in sinful flesh, he was a human being, then he must got sin in him then, because he was a human being.
Well, you know, I look at it like this. When Eve ate from the fruit, nothing happened. You got to understand this. This get real serious, because when Eve ate from the fruit, there ain't nothing that happened at all. So it wasn't actually her doing. You know, it didn't come to play until Adam ate the fruit. Then y'all came down. What's this? What is this? You know, but he did give out the curses in the order that it happened. You know, that's why he said he will put enmity between the woman's seed and Satan's seed. He could have easily said man's seed, but man had already sinned. So anything coming from man is sin. So this woman received her own seed, which was untouched by sinful man.
Well,
that's how I look at
that's
it.
What that I think.
Scripture.
I think that's what I'm getting at is that the woman's still a human being. Like, so we got to think about this now. Now, okay, this is talking about kind of both things that got hit on. You said about not knowing and still being punished. The Most High gave the commandment to Adam, but that's not to say that that Hava was innocent because he gave the commandment to her. She was still guilty. That's why she still got punished, because the law had to go down. We even if we was to say that he didn't communicate, Adam didn't communicate it to Hava properly. They don't talk about none of that. She did what she did. She violated, and then she was cursed. But then if we talk about this whole idea of this is what the Catholic Church has done with this situation, where it talks about the seed of the woman, and the Catholic Church does a smart thing when they deal with this, because they make where it talks about the Immaculate Conception with Yeshua. They talk about Mary the same way, to remove her from humanity so that you can remove that sin from Yeshua altogether. So they fix it and kind of venerate Mary to be immaculate as well. So therefore now the sin is all the way out, because they understand that they must do that in order to get around this idea of a baby being born and being a sinner just by simple fact of being a human being. They fix it at least. It don't make any sense what they doing, but the thought process makes sense, because if you're a human, man or woman, you're still a human, right? So you can't, and they had that thought of just, you're just a sinner just because of flesh. But the scripture teaches us that sin is the transgression of the law. It's an act. It's not like it can be a state of being, but it's a state of being based on continual acts. So we were talking about iniquity. It's like a state of being, but it's a state of being based on continuation of acts. It's not like sin is just like this I can't like take some sin and like put it on you, or actual sin can't pass through my loins to the next generation. Propensities can pass through my loins. I'm saying propensity, that thing which is going to cause you to keep on doing it. Generational curses, right? We talk about generational curses. We talk about, talk about diseases that are connected with our people. It's not because of who we are necessarily, but the culture that we have causes these things to be prevalent because of the things that we're doing. It's not like diabetes just gets on you just because it came through me, like, right. I've been doing this same thing the same way, and then my father been doing the same thing the same way, and I've been learning this thing has been going down.
It's all in the. I was gonna say this a while ago, but it's all in awareness. In regards to sin and in regards to living in the light. It's the same way. The same way Eve was made aware and went towards this sinful act of eating the fruit. It's the same way when you're made aware of the light. When you're made aware, and that spirit is waking up. It's just like now you're leaning towards this. Like in myself, as far as now that I was waking up to certain things, that it was it made it easier for me to continue to go into this way. In the same way, like as far as it's some this form being in you, like sin is in you, but the more you're made aware, kind of like dictates of walking in sin, as far as like letting sin consume you.
Well, according like in scripture, like say for instance Romans 5 or like let's see 5:12, when it talks about we're born sinful. Let's talk about we're born with the sinful nature.
Sinful nature. You gotta say what that is.
Yeah, sinful nature. Like say for instance a child, because a child have some little bit of knowledge, but don't operate in wisdom and lack understanding that they have it. Say for instance, Hiskey was young. He looks at the cookie jar. He wants a cookie because he already tasted. He saw it was pleasing and it was good. So we see the cookie jar sitting there, and he reaches his hand in there, and Tony says, "No, do not do that." For the moment, he's going, I guarantee you, for the moment, he's going to listen. But when he's not looking, and that desire kick in, he's going in that cookie jar. So in that aspect, he's sinning. He's sinning against his own father because it's the lust of the flesh. It's the sinful nature. You know, because the scripture says if we say without sin, man, we lie. We deceive ourselves. So that's why I go back to saying that where Yeshua was totally set way apart from us, because he did not sin. But he came from a virgin who was untouched and unscathed by man.
That's where you said that you was right on track. And then that's where you step to the side, because when we talk about the sin, you step to the side. When you talk about
that's your opinion,
you step to the side, because when
I
you
always stick with scripture.
Okay, listen, when you talk about the sin nature, you have to make a distinction between actual sin and when we talk about the sin nature, we're talking about the flesh, which in and of itself is not sin, but the desires of the flesh cause you. You gave the example of Hiskey. The fact that he wanted to eat the cookie, that's not the sin. The fact that he went and got the cookie, that desire was so strong that he went ahead and did it. Now he done transgressed. So when we talk about the sin nature, you have to make the distinction between the sin nature and actual sin. The sin nature causes you to sin. The sin nature is just your flesh.
Yes,
that's so what I'm saying.
You rebellious against y'all.
Right, but we're talking about actual acts, though.
Yeah, but you can act in sin.
Right.
You can act in sin, but you already had a rebellious nature, so it's already in you.
Right.
You were susceptible to doing it.
So look,
Yeshua,
here, hold on. Let's do this, because this is easy to describe. This is important, dealing with what we're dealing with. So showing that, first of all, Adam and Hava had this thing that Nakash had in them already prior. It just took a little shaking of the thing in order to cause them to do it, just to bring out what was already there. He didn't do no magical like stuff. Hey, guess what? That thing really is good. Is it? I'm gonna get some. He didn't make them eat nothing before they ate it. It was already there in them. And then he said, and then they did it. But look over here and
But it goes a lot to what Chris was saying about the decision. The decision that you're making.
Mhm.
And so I can eat the cookie or I can say no. You told
Right.
me not to eat the cookie.
Right.
So I'm not going to eat. You don't have to eat the cookie.
Right.
You just have to make that decision.
The decision has to be made.
Yeah, the decision is made before you do that. Before you do the acts, like it's already the thought process. But you be having choices. Like
Right.
I always describe when I used to fight, like it would be a voice. I'm not even lying.
Yeah, battle. Yeah, it's a
It would
battle.
be a voice that would tell me. I'll have something like, no, my heartbeat beating. I've had my last, the time before I heard a voice say, hit her. Like it said it. Like it said it.
That moment when
And that was just like, I've literally, this is it said, like my hesitant, like, you know what?
But you didn't
It
have
said,
to.
hit her.
But you didn't have to.
No, I know that doesn't have to, but it's the choice.
Yeah.
It's the choice. So the thought process, and then the action. Here it goes.
Yeah. James 1:14 says, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lusts and enticed. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it's finished, brings forth death. This thing,
Look what I just looked up.
entice.
Right
You already there, right? Because your flesh wants you to feed it. When we talk about a living soul, nefesh, in that definition is appetite and desire. You're made up of appetites and desire, and all I want to do is feed my flesh. That's why you have such a hard time with these little babies, because they don't have an understanding of order. They just give me this, give me that. I deserve this. I should have it. It don't matter if it's in your hand. It's actually mine. It's mine actually. Yeah, it got your name on it, but it's mine though. That's the flesh, and that's the sin nature that draws us into sin. But it's not sin until you actually do the thing. And that's the only difference where you got to make the distinction, because Yeshua was a human being. When he walked on this earth, he was a human being. So if we say that just the sin nature is enough and we can call that sin, then he's no longer the perfect sacrifice. He's no longer the perfect sacrifice.
He had options too. Like he definitely was human when Satan went to him in the mountain and said, "Look, all you gotta do is just bow to me. You know, I'm gonna give you this, that, and the third." That's prime example that he was. I mean, human. He had a decision. I'm pretty sure
we see
he
it.
had a thought process, but the choices.
We see an example there in terms of choices being presented to him. We see example also in the garden when he is praying by himself, and he says, "Let this cup pass from me. Not my will, but thy will." That my will that he's talking about is in his flesh. In his flesh.
He himself had sinful nature.
As a human being.
Okay,
as a human being, but that's not to say that he had sin.
Okay,
The sinful nature.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking
the
about.
sinful nature.
In the scripture, it says all men have sinned. All means everybody, even little teeny bitty babies.
Well,
all men have sinned. But guess what?
They have the nature. Yeah.
But it also says that Yeshua was without sin, so it never said sinful nature. So
that's
I do
like
understand.
saying
I do understand that, and I agree with that.
Well, that's like that would be saying basically any thought that comes in your mind that tries to deceive you, you're sinning right now.
Well, Yeshua broke that down and said, if you think about listening to a woman, you're sinning. If you're thinking about killing the man, you already did it. So that right there shows you if you think about it, you already sinned.
But
So
even
you're
even if we
saying-
think, even if we just taking it to that level,
That's
there's
a lot of
still
technicality.
a measure of manifestation to it, though, and that's the
Yeah.
point.
But
You
maybe-
you cannot say this is what we have to get squared away. We cannot say that the sin nature is sin itself, because then we nullify
Well, no, it comes with choice.
then we nullify Yeshua.
That's right.
Because
But it comes
he
with choice.
came in sinful flesh. The scripture says he was tempted in every way, yet he was sinless.
Wait, so I'm confused. So even if you have, this is kind of
If you
if you have your thought, you got thoughts, and you have decisions. So you mean to tell me because this thought was right here, you're making a choice. This thought made you sin.
I think
don't
there's
agree with
I
that.
think with Yeshua, I think there's levels
That's
to I
way
think
too
there's
technical.
levels to what Messiah was saying. If I have a passing thought and I cast that thought down, it's different than me being fixed on it.
Right, right. So,
If
that's what
I'm
saying. Yeah, so
That's
you,
the beginning
so
of
you
sin.
gotta know what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
You gotta watch that approach to somebody because that approaching it that way will have somebody going crazy, like, oh, I'm sinning. Like, no, it's not like that. You know, there's so that's taking it
The
taking
words
it too literal.
the words of Messiah are true. What he said: if you hate
Very
a man
true.
in your heart, then you might as well have killed him.
Right.
But we just not talking about.
But
I
that's
don't really mess
acting
with
on
that.
the choice stuff. If
But
you're hating,
what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that expound on what Yeshua said in terms of this whole idea of hating in your heart and you killed them. It's not a light thing, though. It's not like this person like knocked my thing over and I'm saying that if you're fixated over this thing, I can't never stop thinking about the feelings that I got towards this person.
right.
That's what he's talking about. It's not just like a passing thing,
Yeah,
like
and that's why I said you have to watch how you're wording that.
yeah.
And taking this literally, like be especially to somebody new to it. You know what I mean? Like that's just you can't just you're throwing it out there like yes, and like no, you know how many thoughts pass through anybody, so that would be weird.
Yeah,
You know?
So like if I had a passing thought
Right.
about this woman that I see is one thing, but then
Right.
she's gone and I'm still thinking about her, and then I'm
okay.
home and like that's what it's talking
That's
about.
what it's saying. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
You misunderstood what I was saying. That's all.
I was just trying to make it clear because we have to do that.
We do,
Otherwise, we put Messiah,
yeah.
we make him sin, and he wasn't sin because he was tempted in every way, yet he was sinless, which means he didn't do
right.
The thoughts didn't bring him to the place of sin.
But then we gotta go back to the point. Then
We got to go back to where we at.
Right,
So if we talk about the seed of the woman,
that's what I'm talking about. The seed of the woman.
we got to
Why did they
understand.
come to the woman.
We
and
got to
instead of the
understand.
man?
We got to understand that we have to understand that first of all, the woman don't have a seed.
That's right. She incubators of life.
She got the egg that's fertilized by the man's seed,
and she incubates.
So when we see that, we think about what happened with Yeshua, where Miriam's egg was fertilized by life itself, right? But what I'm saying is that Yeshua was still a human being, though. He was still a human, whether he got whether well, we know it didn't happen from his natural father.
Whether he was conceived by,
but whether it was one way or the other, he still got however many chromosomes it takes to make. He was a human being. So we still have to keep that in consideration and say, yes, he came the way he came. And I think that that thing about the Nakasha seed and woman's seed is pointing us to the first prophecy we have in the scripture that points us to Messiah. But we can't take him outside of the realm of humanity, because then how's he our kinsman redeemer?
You're right.
He literally was a human being.
You're right.
So he not only was a human being, but he had that sinful nature, because we seen where the scripture says he was tempted. We see where he was tempted, and then when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, he hints to having some thoughts that could potentially be
'cause he said,
separate than the
"Take this
Almighty."
cup from me, man.
But he didn't act on
He
it,
did
right?
not do it, right?
So we have these little examples of the flesh kind of
Example.
trying to rise up,
Right.
but he pushes those things away, right? So we just have to make the distinction between actual sin and the sin nature. The sin nature is just the flesh and its
That's what I was
desires.
saying, right? They're separate.
Yeah, just
You
wanted
know,
to,
now look,
we just
now,
wanted to make it
I want
clear.
to clear that up too. But now what just hit me was you're absolutely right, because Yeshua, well, I'll say Yah, whose word became flesh, he did it himself, but he came to set an example, being that he was bound by sinful flesh, that he's also letting us know that we too can do that.
Yeah.
We too can choose not to do evil or good.
Right. That's
Just
the point.
as Yeshua did. That's why we're called to simulate him.
Exactly.
Though he did have the sinful nature, I agree with that, he still did not act in sinning. And we also have that ability too, but it also tells us the spirit is willing and the flesh is weak.
Yeah.
So because we didn't come in the same way as Yeshua got a little good head start on us, because he was impregnated by the spirit, for crying out loud. We was impregnated by man's seed. So he got a jump start on that. So but we can still attain that if we strive.
Even when we think about that Yeshua,
Like that too, though. That was conceived by man. A couple prophets I just learned about. I mean, you got
But everybody-
Joshua, Gideon, Moses.
But everybody y'all use
But-
as a character defect.
when we think about Yeshua, though, it talks about the fact that he grew in maturity, though. Right? So we see like the highlight reel of Yeshua, which was these few years when he was out. But if we go to the beginning, remember his mother had to push him forward into doing anything, right? At the very beginning. So you can see, even in that, you can see his humanity. You could talk about that and say, well, what is it in his flesh that needs this external push in order to even get things going? Right. So I'm saying that just to say we see his humanity, right? But it talks about him having the spirit without measure. So I guess he did have us a little bit, right? A little bit is probably an understatement, but we do see where there, even with Yeshua, there was a process of growth, which is really a picture for us, right? Because when we come to the truth, it's not like you make a decision then automatically you're just this perfect individual, right? It's a growth process, and the more you walk in righteousness,
The battle.
the more you become. Yeah, absolutely, it is a battle. Okay, so saying all that, we keep on going down here. Let's drop down some. We see like how we was talking before about this idea of the tree being good for food, pleasant for the eyes. It says it right there, verse 6 of chapter 3. The woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of the fruit and ate. See, all of that was a lie. That was a lie, because the scripture didn't ever refer to it as that. That was the lie that she received. Nakah said to the woman, "You certainly won't die. Elohim knows that the day that you eat," then he's playing around with words, "for Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be open, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil." Now, who wouldn't be enticed by that thought? If you mean to tell me if I eat this thing, I can be like Elohim. But already we could connect that, even that, to being the flesh, because pride is in the flesh. You mean to tell me I can be what? That's your flesh doing that, wanting you to just be all of this, right? So the only reason why that is appealing is because of your flesh. So again, I'm saying that this thing is already in them, in their flesh. All he had to do was just make it look good.
That's true. Like when I was, remember I told you when I was younger, like my mom had got saved and was an Adventist. So the first 5 years, I never remember even caring about eating pork or caring about a holiday. It's caring about Halloween because we were only with those types of people. Once we moved here when I was 5, and now with my family, and they partake in all this. That raised awareness. Now I want to know why can I?
What is that stuff they talking about?
Yeah, it's like what? I remember I told you I never genuinely followed because we were at this point we're living around like we're the only ones who don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, but now I see my cousins in their costumes. I see this, so it's like, well, why can't I wear my costume?
Yeah.
Like the awareness is there now as
Mm-hmm.
a child.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much the same, But prior to that, I don't never remember even caring about seafood or whatnot. And then once you do try it, and it's all this stuff that it was made like it was nasty. This is good. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's better than all what I was eating. That's but I would have never thought like that had it not been.
There is I don't know if John, you're able to find it. There is a scripture that talks about those that were the young ones in the wilderness, who did not have the knowledge of good and evil. And it talks about them in reference to them not being part of the judgment of the ones who were 20 and older.
That's in Deuteronomy when they
were. Yeah, but what's the verse though?
Is that when they went out into the when Caleb and Joshua came back from him and the people came back from looking in the land and seeing?
Well, when that happened, I think that was in Numbers when that happened. But I'm saying in terms of the Most High referring to those younger ones as not having the knowledge of good and evil.
Like the age of accountability or something.
Yeah, but
so we had to wait. Then they have to wait till they.
It don't say that though. It literally says good. I'll just search it because it literally says they didn't have the knowledge of good and evil. Yep, there it is.
One of the most things that get to me is in John 17. Is it John 17? I believe so. Where he was saying to y'all, I did all the wonderful works you sent. I did the works you sent me to do. I manifest your name among those you sent me. Check this out. He say, now glorify myself back to yourself as we were before the world was. When I first read that, man, that blew my mind. I said, wow. Then I go to John, verse 3. Was it verse 3, 8, 1? What is it? 183 or 1? I forget the address, but I do know it says that about Satan being the sinner and liar from the beginning. And for this purpose, it says, for this purpose, the Son of Man was manifested that he might destroy the works of the devil. So that take me back to Genesis 3:15 when he said, I'll put enmity between your seed and the woman's seed, and he will, he will crush your head, and you shall bruise his heel in the process. It was for that reason. That's why I tell a lot of Christians and pastors, you cannot build a house from the second floor, man. You got to understand what actually happened in the garden. You got to understand exactly why we need a savior in the first place. You understand? I said, then you can build from there.
Yeah,
It was for that
the
reason.
Torah is definitely the foundation. Here's the verse here, verse Deuteronomy chapter 139. I'll just read. Oh, let me just go up one so we could just get the context. Yehoshua, son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there, strengthen him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit, and your little ones and your children, who you say are for a prey, who today have no knowledge of good and evil, they are going in there, and to them I give it, and they are to possess it. So it talks about those little ones and those children, those ones who was going in, the ones who were below that age.
Right.
They didn't have. I'm thinking about that because of what you're talking about in terms of this awareness, and in the culture, they're not going out to the outside.
Right.
All they getting is Torah.
Yeah.
And you pricking them with it their whole life, getting them ready. Then when they become of age and start dealing with commerce and the other nations and all like that, now they see what's that thing they bowing down to over there? What is that?
What is that?
Yeah.
What they doing? So when you think about this whole idea of this knowledge of good and evil, you have to think about this whole idea of awareness.
Yes. It is, like, even in this situation with myself and my family, I kind of want to be set apart from certain things. Not that I'm better than you, but I just, if we don't partake in the same things, it'll be like a battle amongst my child. Mm-hmm. And I know that because when we came here, it became like I was aware to things now. And this is from my family. This is not like outside. So just imagine outsiders who do things different. I just learned about Gideon, and I was more confirmation learning, seeing that even though at this point when you go into the book of Judges, it talks about how the children now didn't know the Lord, like how the previous ones, Joshua died and the elders died. So these ones don't know. They are in Canaan with the other nations at this point. Mm-hmm. They see them worshiping Baal and the other goddess. But you got Gideon's parents who obviously was still instilling, they were still doing the law and commands. Because even still, he was saying when the angel came to him, he said, like, how is the Lord with us? I've been told by my parents what he's done. So obviously they were setting things apart. But it also talks that he was scared once he knocked the altar down, when the Most High told him that he was scared for what his family. So he had to be speaking of outside the parents, what they were going to do. Mm-hmm. So that awareness being raised, like if you're keeping it in, but I mean, obviously the awareness wasn't raised because he would have been serving this vow too, because that's what everybody was doing at that point. Yeah.
Which, and thinking about it like this also takes it back to what we said before in terms of just the order of things. Not necessarily that the knowledge of good and evil is something that's evil in of itself, but when are you getting it? When are you actually partaking and exposing yourself to this particular knowledge? What's the order of when it's happening? Because eventually those kids gonna have to grow up and go out and deal with something that's not the way that they're being shown at some point. But by the time they get to it, now life has already been established inside of you.
Can come now, but that life has been there.
The life got to come first. Right. Yes, absolutely. They jumped the gun. Mm-hmm. He jumped the gun.
Because it would have been different if I'd have been brought around my family at like 15. Mm-hmm. Or as opposed to 5. Mm-hmm. 15, it's like it's so far instilled. Or even if I'd have been in my 20s, it's been 20 years. I've only been around this type of thing. So coming around this, my brain has been growing this whole time. So this repetition is going to keep being so far instilled. What now is like, oh no, it'll be more not just so young. Like why? It would have been a lot different.
Putting that break.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we keep on looking down here. We see after the act is done, after the they partook of this tree, and they become aware, and all of a sudden now they the Most High called unto them, "Where are you?" He said, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself."
Like, how do you know to be afraid now?
Right, that's what I thought.
Like,
Yeah.
this awareness is crazy. Like you're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to this, were you afraid of anything? Like,
Right.
and this made me think of Deja when she
Right.
said it. She summed it up, and she said, like, so basically, we could have been living our best. How do you know to be afraid now? Were you ever afraid before?
Because now you have this kind of other awareness. You think you have an understanding about who the Almighty is until you go the other way and then think again, like, wait a second, maybe I should have never did that in the first place.
But just like you said, as far as things as in animals, right, too. So at that point, when I'm from the way things is scripted in the word, obviously Adam was able to live amongst these beasts in unison without fear. But now down the line, because of man and hunting and doing things, capturing them, putting them on display in the zoo, these animals have now been learned. They have a defensive now. I had a book about the most dangerous animals and read about how everything from large snakes, sharks, lions, tigers, like they don't really attack humans. Like it really is a learned to defensive, even spiders.
That is true.
They are defending themselves.
They defend
But it probably most likely was not like that prior, but it was in them now. Now this has been awakened. They're aware now. Like I gotta protect myself. Like now they're using their venom. They're using you know what I mean? But at one point in time, it wasn't that. At one point in time, lions were not just gonna run over to you if you're in their territory. But that was
and when you when you
think
think about the restoration of all things, it's not only the restoration of man, but it's literally the restoration of all things. It talks about the animals all hanging out together. Things that the lion would actually eat a lamb, but they're gonna be hanging out together, right? When everything is the restoration of all things, right? So it was like that, and then of course after, I don't think it's quite this soon. I think it's later when it talks about animals and things like that. But here we see they're hiding. For one, there's guilt. There's guilt involved. Understanding what has been done. Understanding that there was indeed a transgression. And then no one wants to be accountable to their own actions, right? Everybody's blaming somebody else, right? Just passing the buck. The man said the woman gave it to me. The woman said the Nakash gave it. Yeah, I mean, nobody's taking responsibility for their own actions. But the Most High, it don't matter who gave it to you. I said it's supposed to be this way. Like you can't sit up here and put this thing on somebody else. Right. So we see all these things. We see that, how we actually should be. We must be responsible for our own actions. We can't sit up here and put these things. I don't care what the external situation is. He's not basing it off of that. The Most High is basing off the fact that I said it's supposed to be this way. Therefore, it don't matter how good it looked or any of that, because you just wasn't supposed to do it. And the proof of that is that everybody gets some judgment, right? If it mattered, it would just the judgment would just be placed in one area,
right?
But everybody gets judgment. everybody gets a little bit of lashing from a situation, because everybody was in transgression. Um,
Except Yeshua. Can you imagine Yeshua was sweating blood, man? He was sweating blood. I be thinking about that. I be like, wow. Can you imagine that, man? Oh my goodness. He was, you know why? That sin, that
What verse is that?
I don't know where it talks about when he was in the garden.
It's in the garden.
Praying. When he was praying and stuff, and you know, he was real intense. It was so intense. He was sweating blood, man. So that goes to show you that was a battle in there, man. Somebody was rumbling. The spirit was rumbling with the flesh.
right, and again, that's that same kind of thing where we see when you think about, sometimes that gets minimized and people deal with Yeshua being afraid of death or something like that. But when you think about what transpired with Yeshua, in terms of him taking on that curse of sin and actually becoming a curse as a result of sin for you and I, it's much deeper than just him, not wanting to die, right? The cup that needed to pass from him really it wasn't necessarily about death. It was about him for that. However, whatever that point was, is that they're literally for the first time ever, there was a disconnect between the Most High and His word that He sent out, which is, that was a huge undertaking, right?
I think he was kind of afraid because he was going to experience for the first time y'all turning his back on him.
Well, it is,
because he couldn't look on sin, and he knew at that moment he was going to be by himself. He was going to be lonely. That's a. I mean, according to him, that was frightful, man. That's like little Hisky, like little Moshe. You in the mall, and you tell him, "Why don't you go over there and get something?" And he's like, "Huh?" And he don't want to leave you, man. You know what I'm saying? He really don't want to leave you.
Yeah,
but he does it because you asked him to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Must be trying to escape, actually.
He said, "Yeah, no one else. Let me get away from him." Yeah.
Luke 24, Luke 22:44. It said his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood. So it wasn't
well, as it were. Well, as it were. So what would you say as it were then? Sweat
it's because if you
sweat
go
is
to the
sweat,
word,
right?
It says, I'm reading it from the top. And
so if it was like blood, then it had to be thick.
Right. Luke,
so his sweat was thick. You gotta look at that.
I think that the point there is that there was great distress.
Right.
Whether we take it to the point of it being actual blood or not, the point of it, I think,
you gotta do it.
The
play
point,
on the word says as
the point,
in English,
I think,
as was blood.
Yeah. So it's as is like
blood.
simile.
As it were.
Yeah.
I think the point is the anguish of the moment because of what was going on there. Yeah. Okay, but over here, right? Okay, so if we look at 3:15, Genesis 3:15, I have put enmity between you and the woman in regards to Nakash. I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel.
Or some other manuscripts says bruise.
Bruise, crush.
Just the same.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Right. So when we think about looking at this again, we see here where it's showing the even at the very beginning of the situation here, we already have a solution to the problem before the problem kind of is just all the way even done playing out, right? With the promise of Messiah. right? So we see and we as we experience this enmity. We see this whole desire that there is in life to kind of manifest this thing over and over again, where we want to, in spite of the fact of knowing the difference between what we should be doing and not be doing, in spite of that, we still go and do those things which feel good to us.
I did it.
We always put ourselves on top, regardless of even just consequences. Don't even matter what the consequences are. We just go and do because at the moment it seems like it might be a right thing to do, and as soon as that moment is past, even
Right.
you get to the place of what in the world did I even do this thing for? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a problem. But when we think about what we gain with Yeshua, where we're able to still maybe come to these situations, but then not go left, right? Because of the thing that the Yeshua is able to step in and be right there in that kind of situation where you have this temptation happening, right? And just nip it in the bud, right? Just crush the heel of that crush the head of that thought, right?
Right.
We're able to cast down all of the imaginations that's against Messiah.
Right.
We're able to do that through Messiah. But it is a battle. It's a thing. It's not as if now you just going to just float through life.
Right. There's a story about the two wolves, but I apply it to lions, being that we are Israel, the tribe of Judah, majority of us. There's a lion, two lions that are at war and battle within each and every one of us, one good and one evil, and they fighting ferociously, the flesh and the spirit. And which lion will win in the end is the lion you feed the most. Think about it. The reason why I said feed the most, because we are susceptible to sinning. So at times we might do foolish things. We feeding the evil lion, but the majority of the times we're doing what is good. Through repentance and continue to walk righteously, we feeding the good lion. So whichever lion we feed the most will end up winning. So he who endures to the end shall live.
I think at some point we have to get to the place where we're not kind of entertaining the thought of feeding that other one.
But I'm just saying, it's
at times we might kind of slip it a bone, right? But our life really should be about the killing of it, right? Not entertaining those things, right?
We die every day.
Yeah,
Continually.
we have to get to the thought process of that part of me is dead. It's still I got to keep my foot on the neck of that one every day, right? Knowing that he's there, but you ain't getting nothing to eat, right? It got to be that. It got to be that.
Because the Most High manifest that goes into the fact that with this battle you're going to have, if you're allowing him to manifest, that goes into the meaning of him being with you. Like he's not fighting the battle for you. Well, he is in a sense, but he's with you. As far as the more like my spirit gets conflicted with certain thoughts or like I wouldn't be able like even to just in my choices now. It's more stronger for me to do this. With no question.
Yeah. He's strengthening you.
Yeah.
He's causing you to be changed.
That's him being with me.
Right.
And me
yes.
and me accepting this now at this point. So a lot of my flesh is not as strong as it was at one point in time.
Right,
At
right.
one point
I
in time,
agree
I
with
would have
that.
never even thought that I would be walking away like this. You know, it would have been a longer drawn out process.
Yeah.
But my desire for him is greater.
Like even me this morning, like but everything just seemed like was going wrong. Like Murphy's Law, everything that could have happened. And
Yeah.
it was like my anxiety was through the roof. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm late. I feel so bad. And my old me would have like, you know what? I'm not even going.
Yep.
I'm not even going. I'm not even worried about it.
Because it was easier
But
to
that
do.
desire that I had to change, you know, how to manifest in me was just greater than what I've been giving up. So
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. You know, things I used to do when I'll just say Tambellini. When they pulled up on me in the limo when I was coming from McDonald's from my old job when I first came home, right? And he had all this money. And you know, he called me over to the car. I spoke to him, you know, out of respect. You know, I wasn't being ignorant. But he flashed all this money in my face and said, "You ready?" I said, "Huh?" And guess what? I started thinking about it. I could buy this with that money. I could do this with that money. And something said, "Is you out of your mind? You forgot who you is." So I told him, I said, "Nah, man." I said, "I can't do that." So I started thinking about the consequences too. So I was like, "Nah, man." But you know what he said to me that messes me up to this day? He said, "It's always in you. Damn it. It's always in you." He said, "You killed it." Because I told him, I said, "I killed that MF for a long time ago." You know, when I said, "I killed him." You know, he said, "Well, he still can resurrect at any moment." And guess what? He spoke the truth. Because it's my choice. It's my choice to either keep my foot on his neck or let him resurrect. So you're absolutely right, Tony, when you said put your foot on your neck.
It got to be that. It got to be that. But the thing is that when you talk about growth, we have to get to the place where the things that were our greatest adversaries become our least greatest adversaries. You know you growing if you got new problems.
Right. Yeah.
If you got the same old problem, that's not growth.
You're not growing. Yeah.
If you got the same problems you always had, then that means you ain't growing.
Hey,
you need some new problems.
It's funny you said that. Me and Drino was hanging. You know, we've been hanging lately. I love you, Drino. And we were sitting at the little Indian restaurant and all this stuff, praying over food. And I said, "You know what, man?" We started talking about Job because a little counselor of mine was y'all used me to bring in the truth. You know, we was talking about Job, and she was like, "Well, why did that happen to him? He was so faithful." I said, "Well, that's why." I said, "Now, the closer we get to y'all," I said, "there's a chance we might experience a Job test." I said, "But quite frankly, guess what I'm gonna tell y'all? Don't use me. I'm not ready." Because Job went through a lot. He lost so much, all because y'all was telling Satan, "Look at my servant Job." Saying, "Well, if you remove this, then let me do this." And y'all agreed. Can you imagine that test happening to you? That's why I said if I knew beforehand that it was going to happen, Chris, I'm going to shout out to y'all. Daddy, not me. I'm the wrong one. Try somebody else. Pastor Curtis, for instance. I'm just joking. I ain't mean to say that. But I was like, not me, man, because I mean, Job is strong, man. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I tell everybody, I'm not holier than thou. I did not arise. If you see me fall, I'm going to get back up. But keep in mind, don't put me on a pedestal, man. I'm not there. Because don't put no high expectations on me because I might let you down. You understand? Don't do that to me. Because I don't want to experience the Job test.
I think that a way to think about things, and I think we really should actually think about things in this way. If we kind of set up in our mind and our thought process is kind of a way out. I'm saying that if I set up in my mind, well, I know that I can't do what I need to do, so I know that I'm going to fall down.
But that's a failure. That's a failure,
right? You can't really think about it in that way, right? If it comes about that you do fall down, then you get back up. but I don't want to fall down.
I don't want to fall down.
I don't want to fall down.
Right.
I want to keep on moving forward. And I know that Yeshua in me is able to give me the strength and power to get me over there. Exactly. Then all of those things. So I don't have to, as an imperfect human being, I don't want to sit around and talk about my imperfections. I want to talk about the strength that's in me, who's Yeshua, who's able to get me to the next level.
It'll kind of like this, it'll stagger you. That mindset will actually slow you down. It's more.
Sometimes I would say it depends on the individual.
Imagine in sports, right? And I'm a basketball player,
right?
And in my mind, John, he's better than me. There's no way I could ever.
You're not even gonna play at your
That's a lack of confidence, right?
You done talked yourself out of it. There ain't nobody better than me.
Yeah,
I got all the skills.
Hey, man.
Otherwise, he's gonna beat me every time.
You gotta hype yourself.
I can't get at basketball anyway, but I'm just saying.
But you know what? hey, y'all be good about you ain't good either. Huh?
But my opponent. If my opponent is that sinful flesh,
right.
I can never give my opponent that right away, and never.
And that's pre-discouragement, because here's the thing. You used to always say certain things to me. I would always tell myself, oh, well, he knows my heart, and like no one's perfect.
That's what we say.
I would say,
we say that.
Nobody's perfect. He knows my heart. So, like he knows we're not perfect. That right there may have played, that little thought may have played so much in my fear to ever want to get right. When I was made aware of certain things years ago. So when I had my, this coming to, when I said all of that didn't even matter to me. My thing was like, yo, show me, please just show me, and I'm just doing what you say. I didn't care what he was going to reveal.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't care how much, I don't care how I look. I don't care what I've done, what I possibly could do. I know I want to do what you want me to do. That don't mean that down the line I won't make, I don't know. What I know is what I want to do.
At the moment.
And that's all that's important. To the best of my ability. If I fall short, I fall short, but I don't want to fall short.
Right. I don't want to.
You can't plan for it. Yeah.
Throw whatever at me. I'm going to do the best of the best that I can, whatever's in me, and I'll cross that bridge if a mistake is made when I get there.
I mean, what you say?
I don't want to speak. I don't want to say, oh, but I know I might make a mistake. I don't know.
Right. What you saying right there is exactly what, if you go and talk to somebody who is just doing whatever they want, the first excuse they're gonna come up with, well, nobody's perfect. Nobody. He know my heart.
Only God can judge me.
Hey, you understand? You saying the wrong thing, because the problem is he do know your heart.
Yeah, he do know your heart.
That's wicked.
And Bible already tell you the heart.
You right. He do know your heart.
Exactly.
It's
desperately.
Like this was, I could have been right here 10 years ago or 13 years ago. I could have been at this point. That little thought that, well, only like no one's perfect, and that thought went a long way in the staggering.
When you don't want to, Brother Les said this. I don't know where he got it from, but I've been holding it ever since. When you don't want to do something, you make an excuse. When you do want to do something, you find a way.
You find a way. You're right.
I don't know who said that. In my mind, Brother Les said it.
Sometimes, let me tell you something, man. Everybody's walk is different. What I eat might not make you defecate. So what I'm trying to say is, there's times when I do look back in my past and I count my blessings, and I always lose count. I'm gonna give you an example. When one brother came on my page accusing me of doing something that I didn't, he talked real harsh to me, what he was going to do to me and everything. Now, the first thing I thought was, thank you, y'all. I'm not like how I used to be, because I know what I would have done. I would have did this, that, so forth. So I explained it to him. Look, brother, you're not my enemy, except for and blah, blah, blah. But when I got done, do you know how happy I was? I was very elated because it made me recognize the rock was saying, see how you changed, boy? You changed. Go ahead with your bad self. And like Tony said, I hyped myself up. I built my confidence up. I always want to be the best of the best. I always was like that. I was very competitive. So now I can be competitive for y'all. There's no sin in doing that. There's none. You know, it tells us to run, race to the fort, to the end and finish line. Benjamin May said, he who starts behind in the race of life must run faster or forever remain behind. You know, Marcus Garvey said, without confidence, Tony, as Tony was speaking about, you're twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you won before the battle begun. You know, so those are key things right there. And then the Spirit already tells us it never gave us a spirit of fear. You know, there's no sin to be courageous.
he said to Joshua and to be strong and courageous.
Yeah, there's no sin to not be.
But you know that has to be our life. That has to be our life to walk in the strength that we're provided by through Yeshua.
For the battles.
It's gonna be a battle.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a battle.
You gotta
Mm-hmm.
you can't go in there doubtful as far as like how Israel's like, oh, they're big, like,
Yeah.
they was so they didn't even have, they was doubtful, you know, not like you just can't, you gotta have the courage, no matter how it looks.
They would have been in the promised land sooner. They go, like, you know what?
Like, no, they're too.
Man, look, to me, cowardness is a sin to me. Cowardness is a sin to me. That's why I like Genghis Khan, you know, because that man, in his mind, he actually believed that he was the punishment of y'all sin. He tell you, he said, I am the punishment of y'all. If you haven't commit such great sin, he wouldn't send a punishment like me upon you. It's like he was like, come on, y'all, use me. So I start thinking about that. You know, when y'all say vengeance is mine, we don't never know how it's going to happen. We don't never know. He might, he work mysterious ways.
All right, so finishing up this chapter here, we see with the curses given to Nakash, where it says, first of all, we see, hold on. The curse given to Nakash, we talked about that. Curse given to the woman, greatly increase your sorrow and your conception, bring forth children in pain. We see, I guess at this point they don't talk about the time period. You don't really know the length of time if there was a baby that happened without the pain, but at least from here forward, you know, it's gonna be that pain that's women experience. I can't talk about that. I've only witnessed it secondhand looking. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty painful though.
I don't want to.
It looks pretty bad. Yeah. And so one thing when we talk about, you know, people, things that people say, you know, when you talk about, you know, salvation coming to Yeshua, you know, when we look at these things don't get reversed in this realm. It's not like, you know, you come to Yeshua and then now, oh, you know, baby's supposed to come out and don't hurt now, right? It's just a forever consequence of you know, our experience, which, you know, just caused me to think about the fact that, you know, when we come to Yeshua, you know, we still have to deal with whatever life was like beforehand.
He just gives you understanding.
what I'm saying is that we have to still, even though we've been saved from sin, we still have to deal with the consequences of sin.
Mhm.
It don't disappear. Them consequences could potentially be there for the, if we're talking about this, it's there for the rest of your life. But you know, it could be anything. You know, we are able to be forgiven of all of the things that we have done, and everything that forever happens from beginning going forward can be given to him, and be, you can be forgiven for it. But forgiveness for these sins that we may have done don't take us out of the realm of the consequences of our sins.
It's supposed to like deal with it easier. It's like more as opposed to just dealing with it on your own. I don't know. That was
Yeah,
good.
yeah, right. So I mean, that's just something to remember in terms of, you know, this walk and you know, in this relationship with Yeshua. You know, he has made a way for us to be connected to the Father and be forever connected to the Father. But he shows us how he helps us to deal with the things that we have done you know, prior, and he don't make them things go away. The consequences of that sin is still gonna be there. I still got to go, and if I don't go out and till the ground, I'm not gonna eat, because I'm connected to the Father. Don't make food magically appear on my table. I still got to go out and deal with the consequences of something that I didn't even do. I didn't even do that. Right. But the consequences of that is still exists. And you know, that just helps us to think about, you know, the things that we did do. You know, we may have strength to be able to make it through those situations now, but it don't erase it. The consequences of your sin is still there.
Even the understanding, because a lot of situations that I'm faced with is a result of prior to, but I don't. He doesn't even allow me to even try to even get emotional about it. You know, in part, sometimes I do get upset. Sometimes I do, and I be just the enemy, but it's just more so that I understand he's there, this understanding, you know, like this level of acceptance. Yeah, I have to accept it and make sure I'm continue to do what's right moving forward, or I'm gonna be back in that square again, if not worse, because now you didn't.
Oh, it's gonna be worse now. Believe that.
Yeah, like this. I literally had constables come to my house this morning about old fans from like years ago. Like, you've had the opportunity to do this. How many times and how many days? And today of all days, I'm like, really? Yeah, like
then her daughter said she was there.
I was home,
and he didn't even wait. So that, you know, that was.
I was home. Like, so now, but it's those consequences of being irresponsible, not paying my tickets, and now it was coming back to get me. You know, but the fact that I wasn't, you know, arrested was thanks to y'all. But those consequences.
They definitely normally take you right there, like, and you have to go
absolutely,
and they tag on whatever for them coming. And I was telling her, she was like, and then I'm so glad it's so bad. We normally don't drive, you know, something be hit or miss.
Yeah.
She's like, if I was gonna be trying to fly up there, so that means she's already running behind.
Like down, like in the valley, you know, I would run up the hill and I was sweating and all like discombobulated. It was just.
I mean, and just wrapping everything up. When we seek to follow after the Almighty, there's always Nakash in the background, whispering and causing all of this havoc. Whether we talking about outside influences or internal influences, these things get stirred up when we want to sit up here. And it don't matter if you on the other side Everything-
you
everything's
already
good.
involved, but
Right.
yeah, it don't matter. But when you
But now
switch
you
over,
try to, yeah.
no, I ain't-
That's what
Now
I'm not
everything
even
is just
anxious. I'm not
getting
even,
like,
stressing
yeah.
right now. I'm not
Yeah.
even anxious. I'm like, I'll take care of myself.
Mhm.
I'll worry about it later. But before, like, I would have been really like going
Oh, but
crazy.
you see what that guy said? He was like, you want to do what he said. The Most High will do what emotion. You want to do what you want somebody to do what emotion. Satan's there for that.
Right.
He
Absolutely.
he will, and then he knows what. Like if this ain't working, he knows it's he knows which way to go
What
with
to
you.
get you? What to
Yeah.
poke you
Yeah,
with.
he knows. And it's
Yeah.
just
So just in closing, just thinking about all of this, thinking about this whole idea of the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and good and evil. You're thinking about these different awarenesses. Thinking about the fact that we have to get to the things properly. We're continually feeding ourselves with the word, with those things which are pleasing from the Almighty, so that when we deal with situations, we know how to attack every situation, and we know how to make the right decisions. It don't matter if somebody comes along and kind of dangles some treats in front of you, the proverbial treats, dangle those things in front of you. It don't matter how appealing things are, seem to be. We got to be able to lean on that tree of life, who is Yeshua, and be able to say, that thing's not pleasing to me. I don't want no parts of that situation over there. Not because it don't look good, or because the Most High said don't deal with it, right?
That's you taking that spirit on, because he had the strength. And yes, you making him your strength. So now you look at this stuff, it's like I made him my strength, and I'm taking his spirit on. He was able to fight it. There it is. Just fight it. But it's a battle to get to that point.
Yeah.
You gotta it's training. It's practice. You know what I mean? But
and it's little by
it's
little.
doable.
Yeah.
It's little by just
Right.
just tackle one thing at a time.
Laying overnight.
Okay, that being said, we're gonna say Shabbat Shalom for now. All you people getting ready to get into
Shabbat Shalom.
Passover.
Happy Passover.
Yeah, to you. All right. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.